Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are back with more Diary of Anne Frank. So, yeah, as we continue to go through it, Anne and Peter are getting closer. Things are still not looking great in World War II. Let's jump into this. Tuesday, April the 25th, 1944. Dearest Kitty, for the last 10 days, Dussel hasn't been on speaking terms with Mr. Von Don, and all because of the new security measures since the break-in. One of these was that he's no longer allowed to go downstairs in the evenings. Peter and Mr. Von Don make the last round every night at 9:30, and after that, no one may go downstairs. We can't flush the toilet anymore after 8 at night and after 8 in the morning. The windows may be opened only in the morning when the lights go on in Mr. Kugler's store, and they can no longer be propped open with a stick at night. This last measure is the reason for Dussel's sulking. He claims that Mr. Von Don bawled him out, and he has only himself to blame. He says he'd rather live without food than without air, and that they simply must figure out a way to keep the windows open. I'll have to speak to Mr. Kugler about this, he said to me. I replied that we never discussed matters of this sort with Mr. Kugler, only within the group. Everything's always happening behind my back. I'll have to talk to your father about that. He's also not allowed to sit in Mr. Kugler's office anymore on Saturday afternoons or Sundays because the manager of kegs might hear him if he happens to be next door. Dussel promptly went and sat there anyway. Mr. Von Don was furious, and Father went downstairs to talk to Dussel, who came up with some flimsy excuse, but even Father didn't fall for it this time. Now Father's keeping his dealings with Dussel to a minimum because Dussel insulted him. Not one of us knows what he said, but it must have been pretty awful. And to think that this miserable man has his birthday next week. How can you celebrate your birthday when you've got the sulks? How can you accept gifts from people you don't even talk to? Mr. Voskuil is going downhill rapidly. For more than 10 days, he has had a temperature of almost 104. The doctor said his condition is hopeless. They think his cancer has spread to his lungs. The poor man, we'd so like to help him, but only God can help him now. I've written an amusing story called Blurry the Explorer, which was a big hit with my 3 listeners. I still have a bad cold, and I passed it on to Margot, as well as Mother and Father. If only Peter doesn't get it. He insisted on a kiss and called me his El Dorado. You can't call a person that, silly boy, but he's sweet anyway. Yours, Anne M. Frank. Thursday, April 27th, 1944. Dearest Kitty, Mrs. Von Don was in a bad mood this morning. All she did was complain. First about her cold, not being able to get cough drops, and the agony of having to blow her nose all the time. Next, she grumbled that the sun wasn't shining, the invasion hadn't started. We weren't allowed to look out the windows, etc., etc. We couldn't help but laugh at her, and it couldn't have been that bad since she soon joined in. Our recipe for potato kugel modified due to lack of onions. Put peeled potatoes through a large food mill and add a little dry government issue flour and salt. Grease a mold or overproof dish with paraffin or stearin and bake for 2.5 hours. Serve with rotten strawberry compote. Onions not available. For oil, nor oil for mold or dough. At the moment, I'm reading Emperor Charles V, written by a professor at the University of Göttingen. He's spent 40 years working on this book. It took me 5 days to read 50 pages. I can't do any more than that. Since the book is 598 pages, you can figure out just how long it's going to take me. But that's not even counting the second volume. But very interesting. The things a schoolgirl has to do in the course of a single day. Take me, for example. First, I translated a passage on Nelson's last battle from Dutch into English. Then I read more about the Northern War, 1700 to 1721, involving Peter the Great, Charles the XII, Augustus the Strong, Stanislaus Leczinski, Mazeppa, von Gors, Brandenburg, Western Pomerania, Eastern Pomerania, and Denmark, plus the usual dates. Next, I wound up in Brazil, where I read about Bahia tobacco, the abundance of coffee, and 1.5 million inhabitants of Rio de Janeiro, Pernambuco, and Sao Paulo, and last but not least, the Amazon River. Then about Negroes, mulattoes, mestizos, whites, the illiteracy rate over 50%, and malaria. Since I had some time left, I glanced through a genealogical chart. John the Old, William Lewis, Ernest Casimir the First, Henry Casimir the First, right up to little Margaret Francisca, born 1943 in Ottawa. 12 o'clock, I resumed my studies in the attic, reading about deans, priests, ministers, popes, and whoo! It was 1 o'clock. At 2, the poor child, ho-hum, was back at work. Old World and New World monkeys were next. Kitty, tell me quickly, how many toes does a hippopotamus have? You can name the Bible, Noah's Ark, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. After that, Charles V. Then, with Peter, Thackeray's book about the Colonel in English, a French test, and then a comparison between the Mississippi and the Missouri. Enough for today. Adieu. Yours, Anne M. Frank. Friday, April the 28th, 1944. Dearest Kitty, I've never forgotten my dreams of Peter Schiff. See the beginning of January. Even now I can still feel his cheek against mine and that wonderful glow that made up for all the rest. Once in a while I had the same feeling with this Peter, but never so intensely. until last night. We were sitting on the divan, as usual, in each other's arms. Suddenly, the everyday Anne slipped away, and the second Anne took her place. The second Anne, who's never overconfident or amusing, but wants only to love and be gentle. I sat pressed against him and felt a wave of emotion come over me. Tears rushed into my eyes. Those from the left fell on his overalls, and those from the right trickled down my nose and into the air and landed beside the first. Did he notice? He made no movement or showed that he did. Did he feel the same way I did? He hardly said a word. Did he realize he had two Anns at his side? My questions went unanswered. At 8:30 I stood up and went to the window where we always say goodbye. I was still trembling. I was still Ann number 2. He came over to me, and I threw my arms around his neck and kissed him on his left cheek. I was about to kiss kiss the other cheek when my mouth met his, and we pressed our lips together. In a daze, we embraced over and over again, never to stop. Oh, Peter needs tenderness. For the first time in his life, he's discovered a girl. For the first time, he's seen that even the biggest pests also have an inner self and a heart and are transformed as soon as they're alone with you. For the first time in his life, he's given himself and his friendship to another person. He's never had a friend before, boy or girl. Now we found each other. I, for that matter, didn't know him either. Had never had someone I could confide in, and it's led to this. The same question keeps nagging me. Is it right? Is it right for me to yield so soon? For me to be so passionate? To be filled with as much passion and desire as Peter? Can I, a girl, allow myself to go that far? There's only one possible answer. I'm longing so much, and have for such a long time. I'm so lonely, and now I've found comfort. In the mornings, we act normally. In the afternoons, too, except now and then. But in the evenings, the suppressed longing of the entire day, the happiness and the bliss of all the times before come rushing to the surface, and all we can think about is each other. Every night after our last kiss, I feel like running away and never looking him in the eyes again. Away, far away into the darkness and alone. And what awaits me at the bottom of those 14 stairs? Bright lights, questions, and laughter. I have to act normally and hope they don't notice anything. My heart is still too tender quickly from the shock of the one I had last night. The gentle Anne makes infrequent appearances, and she's not about to let herself be shoved out the door so soon after she's arrived. Peter's reached a part of me that no one has ever reached before, except in my dream. He's taken hold of me and turned me inside out. Doesn't everyone need a little quiet time to put themselves to rights again? Oh, Peter, what have you done to me? What do you want from me? Where will this lead? Oh, now I understand, Bep. Now that I'm going through it myself, I understand her doubts. If I were older and he wanted to marry me, what would my answer be? And be honest. You wouldn't be able to marry him, but it's so hard to let go. Peter still has too little character, too little willpower, too little courage and strength. He's still a child, emotionally no older than I am. All he wants is happiness and peace of mind. Am I really only 14? Am I really just a silly schoolgirl? Am I really so experienced in everything? I have more experience than most. I have experienced something almost no one my age ever has. I'm afraid of myself. Afraid my longing is making me yield too soon. How can it ever go right with other boys later on? Oh, it's so hard, the eternal struggle between heart and mind. There's a time and a place for both, but how can I be sure that I've chosen the right time? Yours, Anne M. Frank. Tuesday, May the 2nd, 1944. Dearest Kitty, Saturday night I asked Peter whether he thinks I should tell Father about us. After we discussed it, he said he thought I should. I was glad. It shows he's sensible and sensitive. As soon as I came downstairs, I went with Father to get some water. While we were on the stairs, I said, Father, I'm sure you've gathered that when Peter and I are together, we don't exactly sit at opposite ends of the room. Do you think that's wrong? Father paused before answering. No, I don't think it's wrong, but Anne, when you're living so close together as we do, you have to be careful. He said some other words to that effect, and then we went upstairs. Sunday morning, he called me to him and said, Anne, I've been thinking about what you said. Oh, I knew what was coming. Here in the annex, it's not such a good idea. I thought you were just friends. Is Peter in love with you? Of course not, I answered. Well, you know I understand both of you. But you must be the one to show restraint. Don't go upstairs so often. Don't encourage him more than you can help. In matters like these, it's always the man who takes the active role, and it's up to the woman to set the limits. Outside, where you're free, things are quite different. You see other boys and girls. You can go outdoors, take part in sports and all kinds of activities. But here, if you're together too much and want to get away, you can't. You see each other every hour of the day, all the time, in fact. Be careful, Anne, and don't take it too seriously. I don't, Father, but Peter's a decent boy, a nice boy. Yes, but he doesn't have much strength of character. He can easily be influenced to do good, but also to do bad. I hope for his sake that he stays good, because he's basically a good person. We talked about some more and agreed that Father would speak to him too. Sunday afternoon, when we were in the front attic, Peter asked, Have you talked to your father yet, Anne? Yes, I replied. I'll tell you all about it. He doesn't think it's wrong, but he says that here, where we're in such close quarters, it could lead to conflicts. We've already agreed not to quarrel, and I plan to keep my promise. Me too, Peter, but Father didn't think we were serious. He thought we were just friends. Do you think we still can be? Yes, I do. How about you? Me too. I also told Father that I trust you. I do trust you, Peter, just as much as I do Father, and I think you're worthy of my trust. You are, aren't you? I hope so. he was very shy and blushing. I believe in you, Peter, I continued. I believe you have a good character and that you'll get ahead in this world. After what we talked about after that, we talked about other things. Later, I said, if we ever get out of here, I know you won't give me another thought. He got all fired up. That's not true, Anne. Oh no, I won't let you even think that about me. Just then, somebody called us. Father did talk to him. He told me Monday, your father thought our friendship might turn into love, he said, but I told him we'd keep ourselves under control. Father wants me to stop going upstairs so often, but I don't want to. Not just because I like being with Peter, but because I've said I trust him. I do trust him, and I want to prove it to him, but I'll never be able to if I stay downstairs out of distrust. No, I'm going. In the meantime, the Dussel drama has been resolved. Saturday evening, at dinner, he apologized in beautiful Dutch. Mr. Van Daan was immediately reconciled. Dussel must have spent all day practicing his speech. Sunday, his birthday, passed without incident. We gave him a bottle of good wine from 1919. The Van Daans, who can now give their gift after all, presented him with a jar of piccalilli and a package of razor blades, and Mr. Kugler gave him a jar of lemon syrup to make lemonade. Miep a book, Little Martin, and Bep a plant. He treated everyone to an egg. Yours, Anne M. Frank. We'll go ahead and end there, but yeah. So, the relationship between Peter and Anne continues to grow stronger. They have their first mouth-to-mouth kiss. So things getting serious. They still love to spend time with each other and just sit there with each other. But yeah. Anne's father still is like, look, it's still my responsibility. I know there's a lot of bad things going on. I trust you. You are a smart girl. I trust Peter. He's a good kid. But I do have to provide this warning. And when you are all crushed together like this, if ill feelings develop from what was otherwise very close feelings, like when a relationship turned sour, in those kind of close quarters, it can get ugly. And I think Anne's father recognized this. He's like, look, just be careful. Take it slow. So, yeah. And all this is set with a background issue of Dussel trying to act proper. So, yeah. It's interesting. Even though he's having the struggles with the Mr. Van Daan in particular, so. But yeah, that even as the war rages around them, even as they have to hide for fear of their own lives, life still goes on. So yeah, it's an interesting look at things. But with that, we'll go ahead and end this episode there. As always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.